It is early morning in the Middle Ages. The air is cold and damp, clinging softly to the earth like a blanket left behind by the night. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster cries out, breaking the silence that has wrapped the village for hours. A thin mist hovers above the fields, and beyond it, you can just see the faint outlines of small wooden cottages. Crooked, smoky, and yet very much alive. Each hut is built with timber and mud, patched again and again through the years by tired, calloused hands. Inside one of them, a peasant stirs. His name does not matter, for he is every man and every woman who has ever lived and worked in a medieval village. He opens his eyes before the sun has even risen, not because he wants to, but because the rhythm of his life allows no rest beyond what the darkness gives. There are no clocks, no alarms, only the whisper of the wind and the quiet memory of work waiting to be done. He sits up slowly, brushing hay from his rough wool blanket. His small hut smells of smoke, earth, and last night's ashes. In the corner, his wife turns in her sleep beside a small fire that has nearly gone out. A child coughs softly, wrapped in worn fabric, dreaming of a world he will one day inherit. A world of toil, but also of quiet endurance. Outside, the first bell from the church tower begins to ring. Its deep, heavy tone rolls through the mist, announcing that morning prayers will soon begin. Every sound in this world carries purpose. The bells tell the village when to rise, when to work, when to rest, and when to pray. The man steps outside, barefoot on the cold ground. His breath becomes visible in the chilly dawn, small clouds of warmth escaping into the grey. He looks over his small field, uneven, muddy, and poor. But it is his. He owes part of it to his lord, as every peasant must. Yet what remains feeds his family, if the weather allows. The world is still half asleep. The sky glows faintly pink, as if unsure whether the sun should return again today. In the distance, a wooden cart creaks. The miller is already awake, carrying grain from one village to another. Soon, the man will follow the same path, to the fields, to the animals, to the endless rhythm of survival that defines his life. He bends down, gathers a few sticks, and returns inside. With practiced movements, he breathes life into the dying fire. A small flame flickers, then grows, painting the walls in amber light. His wife wakes up now, wordless, and begins to prepare the simplest of meals. A crust of bread, a bit of broth left from the night before. No luxury, no hurry, just quiet necessity. The smoke rises through a small hole in the roof, curling toward the fading stars. Outside, other doors open. Women carry buckets to the stream. Men sharpen their tools. Children run barefoot in the mud, their laughter faint but real. Life here is not rich, but it is full. Full of the kind of meaning that only survival can bring. Every mouthful of food, every drop of water, every hour of sunlight, all are earned, and all are fragile. The narrator's voice softens even more. In the medieval world, dawn was not a beginning of freedom, but of duty. Yet, within that duty, people found a strange peace, for they knew no other way to live. The village begins to stir like a single living body. The sound of axes in the woods, the lowing of cows, the faint murmur of prayer from the chapel. The priest's voice rises, blessing the day that has come. Somewhere beyond the fields, the manor stands, a reminder of the world's order. High walls, guarded gates, and the Lord who owns everything within sight. But down here, among the mud and straw, people keep their own quiet dignity. The peasant shoulders his wooden hoe and steps out into the mist. His shadow stretches across the wet ground, merging with the others walking beside him. Together they move wordlessly, like a tide returning to the sea. The day begins not with joy, nor with despair, but with calm acceptance. In the medieval world, that was enough. As the sun finally rises, the golden light touches the rooftops, the fields, and the faces of those who have already begun to work. It is neither beautiful nor ugly, just real, as life always has been. And as the narrator's voice slows to a whisper, the village is awake now. The world turns once more. And somewhere, between the sound of bells and the breath of morning, history begins again. There is a quiet wisdom in the way medieval people lived. a rhythm of hunger and fulfillment, of patience and gratitude. Every meal, no matter how small, carried meaning, for it was never guaranteed. The sun has now climbed above the low hills, spreading pale gold over the fields. The mist has thinned, leaving the earth damp and shining. In the village, smoke rises once more from crooked chimneys, curling lazily into the cold sky. The peasants have been working since dawn. Their backs bend, their hands sink into the soil, and their thoughts drift to the same question they ask each day: will there be enough to eat when night returns? For them, bread is not just food, it is life itself. The word, companion, from Latin companis, meaning with bread, tells you what it meant to share it. To eat bread with someone was to share existence itself. Inside one of the huts, the peasant's wife tends to the fire. The hearth, the heart of every home. Stone, lined, blackened with years of smoke, it is where warmth and life are kept alive. She blows gently on the embers, coaxing them to burn again. The faint smell of wood smoke and baked dough fills the small space, mixing with the scent of damp earth. She takes a piece of coarse barley dough, heavy, rough, and brown, and presses it flat with tired hands. Wheat is for the rich. For peasants, bread is made from barley, oats, or rye, whatever the land gives. She lays it near the flame, turning it slowly until it hardens into something chewable. Something that will keep her family alive another day. Her husband returns from the fields for a brief pause. He drinks from a wooden cup filled with water drawn from the village well. The water is cool, slightly murky, but precious. Wells are sacred places, guarded, watched, and sometimes feared, for they hold both life and danger. A sickness from the well can take more lives than war ever will. Outside, children chase each other, laughing quietly. Their laughter is thin, their energy light, for hunger lives close to them, not as an enemy, but as an old companion. In this world, no one expects abundance. Every crumb is a blessing. The narrator speaks softly. In the medieval world, food was not a choice, it was fate. A good harvest meant survival. A bad one meant the slow silence of winter hunger. During summer, the villagers work long hours to prepare for the cold months ahead. Grain is ground at the mill, stored in sacks, hidden from dampness and rats. Women dry herbs, salt fish, and hang thin strips of meat above the hearth. Every bit of effort is a small promise to the future, a whispered hope that tomorrow will not be empty. The smell of freshly ground grain fills the air near the watermill. The great wooden wheel turns with the steady force of the river. Inside, the miller hums to himself, watching the fine dust of flour drift through beams of light. It clings to his clothes, his beard, his eyebrows, making him look like an old ghost coated in white. Milling is hard work, but it is powerful work. The miller is often wealthier than the peasants he serves, for no bread can be baked without his grind. And yet, his life too is tied to the water, to the endless churning of the wheel. In the manor kitchen, far above the peasants' huts, firelight dances on stone walls. Their servants prepare bread of pure white wheat for their lord. Butter, cheese, roasted meat. Luxuries that most villagers will never taste. Yet even for the wealthy, food is not guaranteed. A bad harvest, a failed trade, a siege, and hunger comes knocking on every door. Back in the village, the peasants eat together at midday. A simple pot of pottage, a stew of barley, leeks, onions, and maybe a bit of bacon, if they are lucky. They dip their bread into the hot liquid, softening it, making it last longer. There are no spoons for everyone, just wooden bowls and shared fingers. Yet, there is peace here. No one rushes. The world moves at the pace of the fire. The narrator's tone grows slower, softer, like a lullaby. Bread, water, and fire. These were the three pillars of life in the Middle Ages. Without them, no castle could stand, no king could rule, no soul could endure. To make fire was to create light. To bake bread was to defy hunger. To draw water was to drink the gift of the earth. As evening comes, the family gathers once again by the hearth. The day's work is done. The flames flicker low, painting the walls in gold and shadow. The man's eyes close for a moment, his hands resting on his knees. He listens to the crackle of the fire, the oldest sound in the world. Outside, stars begin to bloom in the darkening sky. The wind carries the scent of hay and smoke, of life continuing quietly in the shadows. And somewhere in that stillness there is peace, not from comfort but from acceptance. The medieval world was not kind. The narrator whispers, but it was alive, and in every loaf of bread, every sip of water, and every flicker of fire, there was hope. The fire dims. The voices fade, only the soft hum of night remains, wrapping the village once more in the calm arms of darkness. The morning mist has lifted. The fields stretch wide and endless, divided by hedges, wooden fences, and invisible lines of duty. Each furrow, each path, each man's labor belongs to someone. This is the feudal world, a system as ancient as memory, as rigid as stone, yet as quiet as the turning of seasons. No one here owns the earth completely. Even the Lord, proud in his manner, serves a king far away, and the king, draped in robes of gold, claims his power by the grace of heaven. Every life is tied to another, an endless chain, reaching from the lowest peasant to the highest throne. The narrator's voice softens further. To live in the Middle Ages was to live within the circle, a circle of duty, protection, and submission. You worked for the land, and the land gave you life. You owed the Lord your labor, and in return, he owed you safety. That was the bargain. That was the world. In the distance, church bells toll again. Slow and heavy, marking the passage of time, the peasants pause for a breath, leaning on their tools. They glance toward the hill where the manor stands. The manor is not a castle. Not yet. It is a large stone house surrounded by wooden palisades, barns, and stables. Within its walls lives the lord of the land, his family, a few servants, and soldiers sworn to protect them. Each week, peasants carry part of their harvest up the hill, a tithe for the church, a tax for the Lord, and a portion to keep for themselves. What remains after all that, they eat, and what they eat, they earn with every aching muscle. The peasant does not resent his lord. He rarely questions the order of things. It is simply the way the world is. Like sunrise and rain, the Lord protects them from raiders, from wild beasts, from lawless men who roam between villages. In return, the peasants till his fields, build his walls, repair his roads. Obedience was not fear. The narrator whispers. It was survival. To question the order of things was to step outside the circle. And there, only hunger and danger waited. In the manor courtyard, a squire leads a horse past the smithy. The blacksmith's hammer rings slow and steady, echoing down the valley. Each strike shapes not only iron, but destiny. Tools for the fields, blades for the Lord's men. The rhythm of the hammer is the heartbeat of feudal life, patient, unending, necessary. Inside the manor hall, the Lord sits by the fire. He listens to a steward reading a list of dues, grain, wool, and coin owed by his tenants. The Lord is not cruel, but distant. He rules not with emotion, but with custom. His right to command is as old as his bloodline, passed down like the fields themselves. Yet even he is bound. He owes soldiers to his king, taxes to the crown, and loyalty to the church. The higher one climbs in this world, the heavier the chains become, though they glitter more brightly. Down in the village, the priest moves from door to door. He blesses the sick, listens to confessions, and reminds each soul of its place in the divine plan. His presence ties the visible world to the invisible. Faith, in this time, is not an idea. It is the air people breathe. Heaven and hell are not distant myths. They shape every choice, every fear, every hope. At the church, candles flicker beside a wooden crucifix. Their light trembles like small hearts. The villagers kneel, heads bowed, praying for mercy, rain, or forgiveness, often all at once. Latin words drift through the space, soft and mysterious. Few understand them, but all believe them. The church held power not by sword or law. The narrator murmurs, but by the quiet weight of eternity. The day passes slowly. The peasants return to the fields, their backs bending once more beneath the sun. Children gather sticks for the evening fire. A shepherd watches his flock beyond the village boundary, the edge of safety where the forest begins. Every man knows his place, every woman her duty. Freedom is not a word they use. Instead, they speak of belonging, of honor, of faithfulness, and within that structure, strict, unequal, eternal, they find peace. The narrator pauses, the tone deepening. The feudal world was built not on cruelty, but on necessity. It kept chaos at bay, even as it chained the hearts of men. It gave order where there might have been ruin. And in that order, life endured. As the sun sets, the manor's silhouette glows red against the horizon. The peasants gather once more by the hearth, sharing quiet stories before sleep. A child asks his mother why they work for the Lord. She smiles faintly and says, "Because he works for the king, and the king works for God." The outside, the night deepens. The forest whispers. The same stars that shine above the king's castle now shimmer over the smallest cottage. In the stillness between them lies the true heart of the Middle Ages. A world of faith, duty, and endless endurance. And so the circle turns again. The narrator sighs, binding all, from crown to plough, in the silent harmony of survival. The dawn comes again, pale and thin, washing the stone walls of a lonely castle in cold light. A night awakens before the sun, not to trumpet or cheers, but to silence. The kind of silence that fills great halls, when no feast is being held, when the only sound is the slow breathing of sleeping guards and the sigh of the wind through high windows. The armor waits in the corner, blackened with use. It is heavy, cold, and honest. Each dent tells a story, not of glory, but of endurance. The knight rises slowly, stretching joints that ache from years of training and battle. His hands are scarred. His eyes are calm. He moves with care, not haste. For every motion, buckling a strap, tying a cord, tightening a glove, is part of a ritual older than he is. There is peace in repetition, in the slow assembling of oneself for another day. The squire enters quietly, a boy of 15, thin and tired but eager, carrying a basin of cold water. He bows, eyes lowered, and sets the basin down. The knight washes his face, feeling the sting of the cold on his skin. No mirrors hang in this room. A knight's face is known not by reflection, but by the memory of others. When he looks up, he sees not himself, but the cross carved into the wall above the window. He murmurs a short prayer, asking for courage, for strength, for mercy. For all three are needed in equal measure. The squire helps him dress. Layer upon layer a padded gambeson, then chainmail, then plate, piece by piece. The armor is both shield and prison. It protects him from blades but keeps him distant from the world. From touch, from warmth, from ease. A knight's life, the narrator says softly, was not the shining tale told by minstrels, but a long burden carried in silence. An oath that never truly ended. Outside, the courtyard stirs. Horses stamp their hooves against the frozen ground. The sound of hooves on stone echoes like slow drums. Men, at arms, prepare for patrol, tightening straps, checking weapons. The knight walks among them, his armor glinting faintly in the pale light. The peasants look up as he passes, not in fear, but in quiet respect. He is their protector, their wall against the wild. Yet, he feels no pride in this, for he knows that every sword drawn in defense can easily become a weapon of power. Honor is a word he holds carefully, like a fragile flame in the wind. It is easy to say, harder to keep alive. In the training yard, the clang of steel fills the air. Young squires practice with wooden swords, stumbling, laughing, sweating. The knight watches, remembering his own youth. Days when he believed valor would make him invincible, when his armor felt light and his dreams were bright. Now, he knows better. He knows the true enemy is not always found on the battlefield. It lives in hunger, fear, betrayal, and doubt. The wars within the heart are longer than any fought with swords. Chivalry, the narrator whispers, was never about winning. It was about enduring, to act with grace, even when grace seems lost. By noon, the knight rides out beyond the fields, his horse breathing white clouds into the winter air. The road is narrow, lined with bare trees and frozen mud. He carries no banner, no shining colors, only the weight of duty. He inspects the boundary of the Lord's lands, ensuring no bandits or rival men encroach. Sometimes, he meets travelers. monks on pilgrimage, merchants with carts, peasants seeking lost cattle. He greets them all with a nod, offers help where he can. A knight's power is not only in battle, but in presence, the simple assurance that someone watches over the road. The world feels vast, empty, and quiet. The wind whistles through his helmet. The sound of iron on leather, the creak of saddle, all blend into a rhythm that lulls the listener towards sleep. As evening falls, the knight returns to his small chapel within the castle walls. Candles flicker before the altar. He kneels slowly, armor creaking, head bowed. The cold stone beneath him feels real, grounding. He prays not for victory, but for forgiveness. For the faces he remembers, for the battles that ended in ash and silence, for the peace he can never seem to find. The narrator's voice grows softer, almost a whisper. To be a knight was to serve two masters, the one who ruled by crown and the one who ruled by cross. Between them, a man could lose himself entirely. He removes his gauntlets, tracing the sign of the cross with trembling fingers. He whispers the names of those he once fought beside. Some still live, most do not. Their memory clings to him like dust upon his armor. The squire waits by the doorway with a candle. The knight nods, rises, and walks toward the small window. Outside, the stars shimmer faintly above the dark hills. He wonders, as he always does, if his life has truly mattered, if his service has brought more peace or more sorrow. But these are not questions for a man like him to answer. He was born into this duty, and he will die within it. He turns away from the window. The candle flickers. The air grows still. And so the knight carries his burden. The narrator whispers, not with pride, but with patience, for in the Middle Ages, the weight of honor was heavier than steel. The castle quiets. The courtyard sleeps. Only the faint crackle of a torch and the slow beat of a horse's hooves echo in the night. Somewhere far away, a wolf howls, not in menace, but in reminder that all creatures, noble or low, struggle beneath the same moon. Far from the villages and manors, beyond the reach of lords and kings, there lies another world, quiet, walled, and sacred. A monastery. Its walls are thick and cold, built not to keep enemies out, but to keep silence in. The sound of the outside world, the shouting of merchants, the barking of dogs, the tolling of war, fades here like smoke disappearing into the sky. Within these walls, time moves differently. The hours are measured not by sunlight or labor, but by prayer. 7 times a day, the monks gather in the chapel to sing, to chant, to breathe as one. The voice of the narrator softens. To live within a monastery was to surrender the noise of life, to trade the hunger of the body for the hunger of the soul. It is dawn again. A single bell rings in the distance, its tone soft and hollow. One by one, the monks wake from their straw beds. They do not speak. They move slowly, wrapping themselves in rough woolen habits, feet bare against the cold stone floor. The air smells of candle wax and ink, of bread baked hours earlier for the day ahead. They walk in single file to the chapel, heads bowed, lips moving silently in prayer. Inside, a single flame flickers at the altar, casting long shadows across carved wooden pews. The sound of voices rises, plain chant, ancient and even, each note blending perfectly with the next. No one leads, no one follows. It is a single breath shared by many. In this silence, the narrator murmurs, the monks do not seek to be heard. They seek to listen. When the prayers end, the day's labor begins. Each monk has his duty, his opus dei, the work of God. Some tend the gardens, their hands sinking into wet soil, growing herbs for medicine and food. Others care for the animals, chickens, goats, sometimes a few cows. A few work in the kitchens, slicing vegetables, grinding grain, stirring great pots that steam gently in the dim morning light. And then, there are those who write. In the scriptorium, a narrow hall lined with desks and light from high windows. Monks bend over parchment, quills scratching softly. They copy words older than memory, psalms, gospels, and sometimes ancient wisdom from Greece and Rome. Every letter must be perfect, each line a prayer in itself. Mistakes are scraped away gently with a knife. The ink stains their fingers, but the words, once written, will outlive them all. in the age of swords and plagues. The voice explains, it was here, in these silent rooms, that the memory of the world was kept alive. Outside, the fields shimmer beneath the morning sun. The monastery's walls are thick, but not cold to those within. There is peace here, not comfort, but order. Every moment belongs to a rhythm: prayer, work, silence, and rest. When the bell rings again at midday, the monks gather in the refectory, the dining hall. They eat in silence. A single monk stands and reads aloud from a holy book, his voice calm, steady, echoing softly off stone. The others chew slowly, listening. The food is plain: bread, soup, perhaps cheese, maybe a few apples from the garden. But no one complains. To eat is not indulgence, it is duty, another part of their worship. As evening comes, candles glow along the cloister walkway. The sun sets beyond the hills, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. The monks gather once more in the chapel, their chant rising again, filling the cold air with warmth. Each note floats upward, disappearing into the wooden beams and the open heavens beyond. Outside, an owl calls. A soft wind moves through the courtyard. The narrator's tone lowers to a gentle hum. In the stillness of the monastery, the world feels suspended, untouched by greed, untouched by war. Here men build not kingdoms, but eternity. When night falls, the monastery sleeps. A single lamp burns near the gate, watched by the porter, the monk whose duty is to greet travelers, beggars, or the lost. Sometimes, a poor man knocks in the dark, asking for bread or rest. The porter opens the door without question. Hospitality is sacred. The guest is not a stranger, but Christ in disguise. The visitor is fed, given a straw mat to sleep on, and left in peace. No words are exchanged. Only the quiet warmth of kindness. Inside the dormitory, the monks rest beneath rough blankets. The stone floor holds the cool of the night. Beyond the walls, the stars shimmer. The sound of breathing fills the room. Slow, deep like waves on a silent shore. The narrator's voice fades to a whisper. In a world of noise and struggle, there were always places of quiet. In those walls of prayer and patience, the Middle Ages found its soul. The last candle flickers out. The darkness settles gently, not as an ending, but as peace. Somewhere, in the faint echo of the night bell, time continues its endless prayer. It began as most great disasters do, quietly. No thunder, no warning, only whispers. A traveler falling sick on the road. A merchant's cart left abandoned at the edge of a town. A church bell that rings too many times in a single day. No one knew it yet, but something unseen had begun to move across the world. It came by ship, by rat, by flea, by the breath of one man upon another. It crossed mountains, rivers, and borders, and in its path, life itself seemed to fade. The Black Death, the Great Pestilence, the sickness that changed everything. The year was 1347. Europe had known hunger, war, and cold before. But never this. It started in the ports of the south, where sailors arrived from distant lands. Soon after, whole families vanished, houses stood empty, doors were marked with black crosses. The air smelled of smoke and salt, of fear and decay. Dogs barked in deserted streets. The living walked quickly, avoiding one another's eyes. The narrator's voice is calm, almost compassionate. The plague did not come to punish. It came as part of the old rhythm of life and death. A reminder that all empires, all kings, all dreams return one day to dust. In the villages, the bells rang without pause. Peasants buried their loved ones in shallow graves. The priests who came to bless the dead often fell ill themselves. At night, the sky was black. No candles, no music, no laughter. And yet, life did not vanish completely. In small cottages, people still baked bread. Children still played unaware of danger. A woman still knelt to pray beside her door. The world trembled, but it did not stop turning. Some believed the end of time had come. Others searched for answers, blaming the air, the stars, even strangers. But there were those who looked inward and quietly helped where they could. Nuns who tended the dying, monks who carried bodies to the churchyard, neighbors who left bread and water by a door, too afraid to knock. Even in darkness, the voice whispers, the human heart does not forget kindness. In the great cities, Florence, Paris, London, streets once filled with noise fell silent. Markets closed, schools emptied, even kings fled their palaces. But within the silence, something unexpected began to grow. The survivors learned new ways. Fields once crowded with workers lay empty, so peasants began to demand wages. Lords, desperate for help, began to listen. For the first time in centuries, the poor found a new kind of power. The old world had ended, but from its ashes, a new one began to breathe. In one quiet monastery, far from any town, a young monk wrote in his journal, "The pestilence has taken many, yet I feel that God has not abandoned the earth. For even in sorrow, there is still morning light." He wrote each word slowly, as if afraid the ink itself might fade. Centuries later, that page still survives. The trembling handwriting of someone who lived when death walked beside every door. The narrator's voice lowers, softer still, as if speaking to someone half asleep. And so, the plague passed, not in a single day, but in years, leaving behind empty towns, silent churches, and a new kind of wisdom. Those who lived carried its memory like a scar, and they rebuilt their world with gentler hands. When the bells finally rang again, not for morning, but for morning, the world looked different. The air felt cleaner. Fields grew wild, waiting for hands to return. Children were born who would never know what their parents had seen. And yet, somewhere deep in the human heart, the memory remained how fragile life is, how precious a single breath can be. As night falls again, the narrator's voice becomes a lullaby. Sleep now, traveler. The world has always known fear, but it has also always known hope. The same stars that shone above the plague-ridden earth still shine above you tonight. And just as the morning came for them, it will come for you, too. Winter comes slowly to the medieval world, first as mist, then frost, and finally silence. The wind grows colder, the earth harder, and the people of the village prepare for the long, dark months ahead. There is no sound of birds now, no laughter in the fields. The harvest is long over. What food has been stored will have to last until spring. What has not been stored will be missed. The narrator's voice, calm and slow, paints the scene. In the age before warmth could be summoned by turning a wheel, survival through winter was not a right. It was an act of faith. The last harvest before the snows came, every able hand worked in the fields. Grain was threshed, dried, and stored in wooden bins. Onions and apples hung in cellars. Meat, if any, was salted and hung high in smoke-filled huts. The peasants counted each loaf, each bundle of hay, knowing exactly how many mouths would eat and how many days remained until spring. Sometimes, in early winter, spirits stayed high. Families sat close to the fire, telling stories. Children carved toys from wood. A simple pot of stew, onions, barley, a few bones, could fill the room with comfort. But the days grew shorter, and hunger, slow and patient, began to return. The shortest days by midwinter, the sun barely rose above the horizon. Frost covered the thatched roofs like white dust. The river froze, trapping fish beneath the ice. The wind howled through the cracks in cottage walls. Inside, families burned whatever they could find: sticks, old shoes, bits of broken furniture. They slept close together, sharing their breath for warmth. Sometimes, they went to bed early not from tiredness, but to forget their hunger. There were no grand feasts in most of medieval Europe. The narrator says softly, for many, survival meant learning how to be grateful for very little. The shepherd's vigil high on the hills. A shepherd kept watch over his flock. He wrapped himself in wool and furs, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. Every few hours, he struck his staff against the frozen ground to stay awake. He listened, not for wolves, but for silence. When the sheep were quiet, it often meant danger. The shepherd's dog pressed close to his legs for warmth. The stars above him were sharper than any blade. He whispered a prayer, not for wealth or glory, but for dawn. The church at midwinter, even in the hardest cold, the church remained open. Inside, candles flickered, and the smell of wax filled the air. The villagers came together, wrapped in rags, to pray for light and for the turning of the year. It was Christmas time, though not as we know it. No bright trees or feasts, only the soft singing of hymns, the sharing of bread, the hope that spring would return. In every season of darkness, the narrator murmurs, the people found a way to make light. The quiet kindness hunger made people desperate. But it also made them gentle in small ways. A mother giving her last crust to a child, a neighbor leaving half a turnip by someone's door, a monk carrying soup to a sick farmer. The cold tested everyone, but kindness was the fire that refused to die, and when a traveler knocked at a cottage door, no matter how poor the home, someone would share what they had. A little bread, a little warmth, a little hope. The first thaw at last. After endless nights, the wind softened. The snow began to melt. Drops of water fell from rooftops, one by one, like tiny bells of spring. The villagers stepped outside, blinking in the pale light. The ground was muddy and brown, but to them it looked like a miracle. Children laughed again. The animals stretched in the sun. And somewhere, from the dark earth, a green shoot appeared. Survival was never only about strength, the voice whispers. It was about patience. The courage to wait for the thaw. As the night deepens, the narrator's tone slows further. A calm murmur like a fire fading to embers. Winter always comes. But so does spring. The peasants knew this truth in their bones, and in that quiet understanding they found peace. The wind fades. The fire crackles softly. Sleep comes like snow, silent, slow, and kind. The centuries drift away like mist. The castles crumble. The fields that once fed whole villages are silent now, their furrows hidden beneath grass and time. But if you listen closely, in the hush of the night, in the whisper of wind across stone, you can still hear them. The voices of those who once lived here. A peasant's laughter. A monk's prayer. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoing down a frozen lane. All of it remains, faint but eternal, woven into the earth beneath our feet. The Middle Ages. The voice says gently, we're not just an age of darkness, but an age of endurance. The rhythm of life in every age, life has had the same rhythm. The waking, the working, the resting, the dreaming. People long ago did not see themselves as distant from us. They loved, they feared, they laughed in the same ways we do. A woman watching her child sleep beside the hearth, a shepherd counting stars above his flock, a scholar bent over a candlelit desk, copying words he would never read aloud. Each one, a heartbeat in the great story of humanity. Time and memory stone turns to dust, parchment fades, but the memory of their hands remains, in the walls they built, in the songs they sang, in the stories we still tell. For even now, in our modern world of light and speed, we still build fires against the cold. We still search for meaning in the dark. We still look to the sky and wonder what lies beyond. The same stars that watched over nights and peasants still burn above us tonight. Time passes. The voice murmurs, but the soul remembers. The world transformed from their world of wood and stone grew ours, of iron, glass, and light. The towns became cities. The candles became lamps. The silence of the monastery became the hum of machines. And yet, if those who lived 1,000 years ago could stand beside us now, they would still know the sound of rain, the warmth of bread, the ache of love, and the fear of loss. They would still know what it means to hope. The eternal sleep. As night settles over the world again, imagine the old village once more, smoke curling from chimneys, carts creaking along the frozen road. Somewhere, a church bell tolls the hour, as it has for centuries. The people who lived and died here are gone, but not forgotten. Their struggles, their small joys, their quiet moments of courage. They became the foundation of everything that came after. We are their dream, the narrator whispers. And one day, we too will become a memory, the endless morning, and so the story continues. A world rises, a world fades, but life never truly ends. The sun will rise again over the same fields, the same rivers, the same stones warmed by 1,000 forgotten footsteps. Somewhere, a new day begins, and the echoes of the past breathe once more. The voice softens to a hush. Sleep now, traveler. You have walked through time. You have seen the dawn and the dusk of an age. Rest in the knowledge that all things endure, even dreams. The wind drifts through the empty streets of the old village, carrying with it the scent of earth, wood, and memory. The church bell rings one last time, then only silence. A long pause. The fire burns low, the stars move slowly across the night sky. And the Middle Ages, once full of noise, hardship, and wonder, finally close their eyes. Sleep takes them, and you,